Manchester United have a pretty serious issue, and a lot of people don't notice it. Admittedly, everyone's noticed that Manchester United have dropped off this season and had a pretty rubbish year last year, despite the fact that they still came high in the league. They didn't look or feel like a happy club, and there is one underlying reason for it that no one notices, and it is the sheer lack of infrastructure spending at the club. Now, to bring up the specific numbers, Manchester United spent £98 million on their infrastructure from 2010 to 2021. For comparison, Spurs spent 1.5 billion, Man City spent 420 million, Liverpool 266 million. It's not like it's something that clubs aren't doing. And to put it in a little bit more context, they spent more on Paul Pogba in that period than their own infrastructure, which is a pretty big issue. It was the 8th highest level of spending in the division and lower than Leicester, Brentford, and Brighton. All of these clubs have seen very, very serious improvements over this period of time. Leicester won the league. Brighton have gone from, I think, League One to a major club. And Brentford have just completely built a new stadium and massively developed from what used to be, I think, a non-league side into what they are today. And to really understand the issue, you have to ask what infrastructure spending really gets you. And the first thing that infrastructure spending gets you, and I'm going to stop saying that, I'm just going to go to spending because infrastructure spending is really hard to say. One of the main things is the stadium. The stadium is one of the biggest things that a club will spend its money on. So, for example, the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Why am I saying so many words that are hard to get out today? Is over £1 billion worth of football ground, and it'll prove to be worth it in the long run. They've got that NFL deal; they can do anything in terms of concerts that they want. It's a hugely versatile venue, not just a football stadium at the moment, and the club own it, and they can use it as a massive revenue stream going forwards. By comparison, Old Trafford is really, really bad. There are, I think, upcoming international competitions, like I think it's Euro 2028 that we're currently bidding for, that Old Trafford is just not being considered for because the stadium is decrepit and old and falling apart and it doesn't have the facilities that it needs. By comparison, the Etihad, no problem getting into that conversation, which really shows how far Man United have fallen in that past 10, 13 years. In addition to that, there is a big problem with recruitment at Manchester United at the moment, and it's not what people think. People think Manchester United aren't spending enough, but in reality, it's not spending in the right places, and that comes from having the right scouting infrastructure in place. That means paying for the right data systems or putting your attention on like computing systems that can manage all the data that you're trying to deal with and spending on the right members of staff that can implement the right knowledge to build your squad. By comparison, you've got spending 80, 90 million pounds on Anthony, the same sort of number on Jadon Sancho. It's absolutely insane. The fact that Manchester United has spent 2 or 3 times more on right wingers than it has the entire rest of the club in this period is... Bonnie is not a Manchester United fan, but if I was a Man U fan, I would be absolutely livid, and I completely understand why. Another thing that Manchester United really struggle with as of late is injuries, constant injuries, trying to get players back and recovering, and it's not working out. And that's because the medical facilities at Carrington are not good enough. And it's a real problem for them at the moment. At right wing, they don't have any options because various legal issues that I'm not going to get into because minefield. But there's also lots of injuries at left back and the likes of Sancho not being fit, and that could all come from the fact that there aren't the medical facilities, he doesn't feel supported and stuff like that. Furthermore, that means there's also likely to be no like psychological support at the club, which is really bad when you've got Jadon Sancho, whose issues seem heavily psychological, in an active argument with the manager, and you've got no structure through which that's happening safely. And combined, that means that Manchester United is relatively falling apart at the moment. The stadium literally falling apart. The squad is arguing constantly and tearing itself apart at the seams. There are no left backs at the club. Erik Ten Hag has complete control of the recruitment and it's not worked. The club are currently 10th and could easily be a lot lower if certain decisions hadn't gone their way earlier in the season. Example, Onana punching a Wolves player in the head in the first match of the season. And the real question that Manchester United fans will have is, when will this get fixed? And I've got some really bad news for you. It doesn't look like it's soon. The Glazers, have complaints at them every single season because they don't spend enough on transfers. They've not spent on the infrastructure, and I think that's the underlying root issue at the moment. It would rely on the club being sold and the buyer putting a hell of a lot of money into rebuilding absolutely everything behind the scenes, so everything front of stage can start looking even a little bit decent. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe. It's always great to see the conversation in the comments afterwards, and I will see you later.